Welcome back. I'm Dr. Nancy Snyderman. It's a big step by the federal government to address the problem of climate change, and the timing couldn't be more convenient. The Environmental Protection Agency releasing findings that greenhouse gases are a danger to public health on the same day the Climate Change Summit in Copenhagen begins. On the world stage, the findings are read as a commitment from the United States to slow climate change. And back in Washington, the findings are putting renewed pressure on Congress to pass a climate change bill. Joining me now from Washington are California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa and Massachusetts Democrat Ed Markey. Congressman, thanks for taking the time today.
Our pleasure.
Congressman Issa, let me start with you. Representative, why don't you believe at this point that legislation coming out of the Senate is a well-spent idea?
Well, Nancy, first of all, the finding today was on CO2, not all various historic pollutants. And when it comes to CO2, the discredited science now that we're going to have to recreate accurately after this latest, if what we're calling ClimateGate, that science will, the difference in that science's outcome could be the difference in whether or not actually manned changing CO2 is going to make a difference or not in the direction of global warming.
Representative Issa, I know you're talking about the emails from the scientists and whether data was tweaked, but isn't there a concern that perhaps politicians are over-reading scientific shorthand for how you analyze data?
Well, there's no question that we're not the qualified people, but we want to have honest science, and then we want to know, is it a year and a half before the tipping point or 150 years? Because the difference of trillions of dollars spent dealing with all kinds of pollutants and getting us off of fossil fuels for 150 years is a very different solution of money than if the tipping point is next year. It does matter. It does mean we have to get it accurate because it's trillions of dollars that could be spent one way productively or another way if it's necessary.
Representative Markey, point well taken that we should know reasonably what the time frame is, but at the same time, I should say, we're the second biggest carbon polluter, second only to China. So what's our responsibility, and how do you see Congress moving things forward?
Well, what the EPA decided today, looking at the totality of scientific evidence, is that the planet is running a fever. There are no emergency rooms for planets, so we have to engage in preventative care because, according to the EPA, there's an increased risk for E. coli, for asthma, for West Nile disease, and for other ailments, lung-related ailments that could affect the American people. Now, the interesting thing here is that this is all now being denied, and the Competitive Enterprise Institute has now immediately said today they're going to bring a lawsuit denying the science. They're the same people who brought the lawsuit against doing anything about the linkage between tobacco and lung cancer. So the very same people have moved over from tobacco and lung cancer issues now over to another issue where the science is conclusive that it is a real risk to the health of the American people.
But at a time when Americans are worried about their jobs, they're watching health care debate take center stage in Washington, D.C., how do you sell this on top of everything else?
Well, I think it's pretty easy to sell. We import 13 million barrels of oil a day. Half of our trade deficit is on imported oil. We have to create millions of new jobs here using wind and solar and geothermal, efficiency, all new technologies to back out that imported oil, create the jobs here, even as we protect the public health. Why would we want to substitute made by OPEC with made in China? Because these wind turbines, these new technologies, they are our future. We should capture them for the job creation capacity here in America, even as we're protecting our national security and protecting the health of the American people.
Well, and Nancy, Ed Markey is right on one thing. We should be, in fact, becoming self-sufficient and no longer carbon dependent. The problem is the legislation, the cap-and-trade legislation, is going to export dollars and export jobs rather than exactly what I agree with Mr. Markey about. If, in fact, it's all about weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels, getting off of our dependence on coal, making investments in all zero emissions fuels, and cleaning up the atmosphere, they'd have bipartisan support. But right now, the cap and tax bill, as it is in fact a job killer, not a job creator, an exporter of American dollars and jobs, not a net positive. It is something we should be working on. I look forward to working with Ed Markey if we can talk about domestic jobs and domestic solutions only, rather than having a, quote, global decision decided in Copenhagen with China and other countries able to take that oil we don't take, and quite frankly, the jobs we'd like to have being exported there.
And on that note,
Nancy, this is a battle against ExxonMobil, against the coal industry. We should create the clean, new, renewable jobs here. It's our challenge, but it's our opportunity economically as well.
Representative Issa, Representative Markey, thanks to both of you. I appreciate it.